All right, folks, don't be shy. Come on down. Make it easier for you to dance with Ian.
Ready when you are. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, folks. Thank you and welcome. If you've not already been formally welcomed, we hope you're enjoying the workshop. It's certainly been a fun place to move our annual event to. I'd like to ask a quick show of hands. Is there anyone in the room who doesn't know this handsome gentleman up at the front?
I think they're referencing you.
All right, we have a couple. We're so pleased, so thankful, and so honored to have Mr. Ian Mulliner back in Massachusetts. As some of you may know, and if not, I'm sure Ian will give you a little bit of background. Ian spent a fair amount of time here in Massachusetts, but now he's currently the education developer for the USSF Coaching Education Department. So little sterile background, he received his A coaching license in 1998. You're all calculating how old you were in 1998 when he first got his A, right? But has since has many, many awards and accolades to his honor. So he has dedicated not only his life to making everybody laugh, but also to helping coaches provide the optimum learning environments for their players to thrive. We're so, so thankful to have you here, Coach, and we'll hand it right over to you.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate it. How are you? Cognitive load? Should we just go to the bar? I'm good if you are. I'm ready. Oh yeah, unbelievable. It kills all the dead brain cells so new ones can grow. I have no idea what I just said. It's magical. Yes, indeed. All right, so there it is. How learning happens. What ways you can use it for your players and how this will help with player development. Just out of interest, how many of you survived this morning's field session that I was somewhat leading? And all right, so there's a fair few of you. So I'll just put a little disclaimer in here. Ideally, we would have done this session prior to going onto the field, because the field session maybe would have made more sense. And for those of you that weren't at the field session, just thank your lucky stars. I'm not suggesting it was a complete disaster. Was it? Good. Okay. You're just too nice. Fair enough. We'll move on. Nice people. I do like it. That's intentional. And so is that. Everything in this PowerPoint slide deck presentation is intentional because I want you to get a really good understanding about overloading people with information and how not to do it, and why short bursts are much more powerful and help with learning and help with the learning process. So I'm going to have you go through some activities. Whether you want to or not, you're going to do it. And we'll see where we go. All right, so the first question, in red at the bottom. Does motivation lead to learning, or does learning lead to motivation? I'll give you 14 seconds to think about it, and then somebody be brave enough to give me some kind of response. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is fence sitting, but I think it's like a feedback loop. Like when you learn a small bit, you're motivated to learn more, which leads you to learn a bit more and be motivated and build in that way, as opposed to one leading the other.
I see what you mean by fence sitting. Kind of feels that way, doesn't it? It's like it's a little bit of a gotcha question feeling. So I can see how you ended up there. So let's see if we can put some context here. How many of you have been to some form of coaching education, whether it's with us at US Soccer or with Rob and their group at United Soccer Coaches? All right, so hand on heart honesty, how many of you went in there going, ooh, I'm really excited to go to this because I want to get something out of it? So look around the room. These are all the people who don't tell the truth. All right, so brilliant if that was your attitude. So you were motivated to learn. I know, because I've done enough of them, that there would have been people in the room with you that were just there because you fill in the blank. So that's where, if the job is done properly and the learning environment is set correctly, then you might get a little bit more inspired and motivated to continue the learning experience and the process. So it wasn't really sitting on the fence. It really is a good answer. So congratulations, and get off the fence. Magical. So we'll get into cognitive load theory. I am not a scientist. I am not an expert in this field at all. But when it was first presented to me by one of my educator-developer team at US Soccer, I was like, everybody needs to know this. It really resonated with me. And I'm like, everybody needs to know this. It's going to be helpful to every coach and every coach educator, which is my field, everywhere. So I'm hopeful at the end of this, you feel the same way. So first, we're going to get into this little diagram, which is going to drive you insane momentarily. What we're going to look at is working memory and how we take things from working memory and get them into long-term memory so that we can recall it later, or, as you'll see if you stick with it, if we don't use it and recall it, we'll probably forget about it. So this experience you're having, this is the environment you're in. I'm up here saying things. You're trying to absorb it, hopefully retain some of it. Put that in your long-term memory so you can use it, recall it at a later time. And if it's no good to you, you'll just forget about it. Essentially, that's what the diagram's saying. That's how our brains work, and now we'll just delve in a little bit deeper. These are the three main areas that we're going to look at today, and we're going to talk about simplifying intrinsic load. That's deliberate. Simplifying intrinsic load. So this right here, I've got all these gadgets and gizmos within the presentation trying to set you off on a wrong path, trying to introduce some extraneous load through the presentation. So I'm not really helping you by simplifying the intrinsic load. If it was just slide after slide, so long as there was little information bits on there, it would be easier for you to all process. So this is deliberate for right now, but I'm sure you'll understand why later. Your job, my job, our jobs, whenever we're in a learning environment, is trying to reduce extraneous load. So all those outside distractions. There's a friend of mine who just talked about ADD or ADHD. I'm sure you may have come across people, children, some of you players, who have that experience. So how do we work with those people to help them with the learning process? We've got to make sure that they get dialed in and focused, but there's certain ways that we can reach them and other ways that we try to that will fail. Why? That's because extraneous load gets in the way. And then the last piece, the germane load, that's your long-term memory. That's where you're going to pull things from the past and you're going to use them because you've already created these things called schemas that you're going to add this new information to and build on it still further. So for those of you at this morning's session, the idea of scaffolding is related to that. Layering in information little bits at a time so it's easier to understand. So those are the three areas. And now we'll get you involved. Are you ready? Yes, that's extraneous load right there. Just grabs your attention and makes you forget everything that I've just said. All right, so principle number 1. I'm going to give you 7 seconds when the next slide comes up to remember as many letters as you can. There is $1 million prize for the person that gets the most. Actually, it's $1 million for somebody who gets all of them. Are you ready? 7 seconds starts now. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time up. How many?
6. Except now you've spoken to me, not 6.
I'm not going to ask you what they are. Anybody beat 6? Oh, I've got to really... Go on then. Yes? Are you going to say 7? Did you write them down?
No.
Oof.
Afterwards, I made up the word and said Menelphia saw up, but I stopped there.
Oh, really? You're that person, are you? That's good. That's interesting. So this next slide is really going to work for you. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Anybody get more? Why? All right, so that's called chunking. The groups of letters were now chunked into some recognizable words, but not all. And now I've already revealed on the next one the true way to simplify intrinsic load. You will easily remember all of those letters from that first slide, not the first slide of the presentation, because we put them into meaningful chunks. So this is a way to simplify the information. So think about when you're talking to your players, does it sound like that? Or do you get it to be more like that? That's something for you to consider. Okay, are you with me? Are you ready for this? Reducing extraneous load. Now I'm going to get you to really dial in. This is really difficult. So, remove all outer interferences, dial straight into slide. Hope you can follow directions, but mostly I hope you can read English. So you're going to have 2 minutes to answer the questions based on the information that's presented. Are you ready? 2 minutes. Starts now. If only you could stand up here and see your eyes darting back and forth from black text to red text and trying to connect the dots. And yes, oh, by the way, I am trying to introduce some extraneous load and talking while you are trying to read and process information to be able to successfully answer the questions. That's deliberate. It's a terrible thing for me to do, which is exactly why I'm doing it. 30 seconds. Somebody got all the answers yet? All gobbledygook? Time. How many? Two of them? You got all three? You think? Yeah? Go on then.
Harry, geography, Tom, Joe, Sue, Fatima. Harry for the first question, geography for the second question, Tom, Joe, Sue, Fatima for the third question.
How do you do that?
I read and sorted, read it all, read the questions, and then worked backwards, read the data backwards based on how the questions were asked. The data was presented this way, but the questions were asking it backwards.
How long have you been the professor of cognitive neuroscience at MIT?
I'm not. Did I get it right?
We'll see. We'll see. I'm fascinated by this, obviously. Well, maybe it's not obvious to you, but it fascinates me how people do this. Because for some people, they just looked at the screen and completely shut down. Stop wasting my time. What is that nonsense? Right, so let's see if I can make it. Well, before we go on to the next bit, I'm going to try and reduce the extraneous load and make it more simple. How did you reduce the extraneous load? Because there's a lot of extraneous load there. Because you're having to go back and forth and then remember and recall and store it somewhere. Have you any idea how you did that?
The common bucket was the Modern Europe project.
Okay. So you chunked it.
I think you should hold on to that because I think you're going to.
No, I don't.
Oh, now you're engaged.
I don't want this. So yeah, the common bucket was the Modern Europe project.
Okay.
So, okay, who's the highest ranking person on the Modern Europe project? Well, the people were listed top down, so that means I got to go bottom up to find the highest ranking person in the Modern Europe project, and then you trace it all the way back and you get to Harry. Okay, done. First question done.
Okay.
Which department has most people in the Modern Europe department? Well, again, working backwards, you trace Modern Europe department all the way up, you end up with geography.
Okay.
Which people are not involved? Was anyone not in the geography department? Because we went from Modern Europe to geography, so then if you're not in the geography department, you're not on the Modern Europe project. So then that's everyone else in the top part of that's all the other names above the word geography.
You lost me at hello. That.
He read the questions first before he read the paragraph, right?
No, I read the paragraph,
Oh, okay. I read the questions first.
and then I read the questions.
I got it too.
And
Interesting.
Modern, yeah, the Modern Europe project was the most important thing in that thing. So okay, so starting, and then it happened to also be the last words in the paragraph. So it's okay, so I started working backwards, and it just so
Interesting.
happens that the questions top down are bottom up in the paragraph.
What's your degree in?
Aerospace engineering.
Okay.
You too can solve this problem if you become an aerospace engineer. That was really good. Not only was it really good that you've maybe got the answer somewhat close to being right, but the way that you just articulated your process for reducing your extraneous load. So you found a commonality, the bucket of the Modern Europe project. You recognized that the paragraph was top down, but the questions were bottom up, or vice versa. And then you started to sort through that way. So just what a fantastic glimpse. What's your name, Coach?
Tom Hesbach.
What a fantastic glimpse into Tom's head. Fantastic. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you allowing us inside there today.
It's a fun place. You should
Get that microphone off him immediately. All right, so for those of you that don't like the text, maybe, I promise you it's the exact same questions. Tom will vouch for this because he'll remember them verbatim. Can you answer the questions now? And don't forget, there are TVs all around. You don't have to just strain your eyes over here. How close were you, Tom? Is that you? That is you. Oh, yeah, it's all coming back to me now.
Long time no see.
Yes. Yes. Easier? Why? Is it?
Visual learner is one there.
That's why. Okay, so think about this morning's session. For those of you that were there, I had my iPad out on the field with me. I'm an idiot. I like to try things and I don't care if I fail, which is how I like to learn. I get it wrong and go, okay, so what could I have done better? That's my process. So this morning, as I'm thinking about my session and knowing that it's really upside down, I really wanted this session before the field session. That wasn't going to happen, so just deal with it. So I'm thinking I'm just going to take my iPad out and use that to demonstrate that, A, it's okay to use technology when you're coaching. B, to have some form of visual aid for your players is helpful. And C, reaching players through multiple forms rather than just speaking to them, at them, is really helpful to your players. So, multiple reasons. I used it much more with the children than I could with the viewing audience because the distance wasn't allowing. So you probably weren't as privy to what was supposed to be happening on the field as they were. But this idea of mixing visuals with verbals, as it says here, is a real key piece to learning. And especially for those people who have difficulties learning just by reading text. Some of you in this room who shut down on the first part of the question. So just thinking about how it's impacting the way that you interact with your players and the way that they perform because of it. All right, so you'll like this bit. Not a lot, but you'll like it. To get the most out of this and understand cognitive load at its best and highest function, it's understanding how to maximize this thing called germane load. How do you get your players, and yourselves in this instance, to dive in a little bit deeper than you normally would and start to really critically think? I'm hopeful that on this next slide, you'll start to do this. At the back.
Happy birthday.
Brilliant. Pardon?
The alphabet song. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K.
That's brilliant. Now, a couple of things here. I'm more happy birthday than I am alphabet. Why do you think?
Because it's a language, so it's not guaranteed to be translated across people, so people may not know it, whereas that's far more translatable, like Please Not Be Done. That's Merry Christmas, sorry, but Please Will Be Honest. Auntie is Happy Birthday to You in Spanish, for example, and they do the same thing as a song. It's like that's far more applicable across.
All right, brilliant. So recognizing who's in the room, recognizing who's in front of you, that's one of our credos with US Soccer and Coaching Education. It's all about the people in front of you, and that's exactly it. That's why, for who doesn't know the ABC song? Well, somebody who's never been brought up to learn the English language may not be familiar with the ABC song, which you articulated much better than I just did. So brilliant. So happy birthday. But before we go there, and we're coming back to happy birthday, because for sure I said, so we're going to sing. How many of you went to any pop song? So starting point. And then you didn't raise your hand and say, well, let's sing Let It Be by the Beatles. Why didn't you do that? All right, so you went, wait a minute, need to think a little bit about this. But not everybody looks like they know Let It Be by the Beatles. Who are the Beatles, by the way? And so now you have to go a little bit deeper. and you go a little bit deep and you think, well, what's a song that everybody would know? And we get Happy Birthday, and we get ABCs, but not really, because if you don't speak English and that's not your first language, that might not be it. So now you've got another song for me. I can't wait.
Well, I actually do have a question. So I initially thought of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but I genuinely don't know why I naturally went to think that that would not be as applicable as the ABCs were. I don't know if you would actually be able to answer that, 'cause I don't know why I had that thought process.
All right, so, I mean, I tried to get inside Tom's head. He just completely shut the doors on me. So now I'm going to try and get inside your head. Mission impossible. What you've done is it's a natural thing that most everybody in the room probably did. No pop song, but I thought of a pop song. I sing this all the time. Everybody must know it. Probably not. So now let me go back and revert to childhood. What were the songs that we learned verbatim in childhood? And now you go into that list. So you're going deeper and deeper into your Jermaine load, your long-term memory. This is brilliant. It's exactly what we want to have happen. But now you're starting to rationalize Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Everybody should know that. Ooh, key word, should. ABCs. Everybody knows that. Ooh, hang on a minute. So really good. Because now you're starting to critically think. So it was a normal reaction that you went from there, no, rationalized it in your own head, to early childhood. Why? Because how many songs do you sing in early childhood? And how many of them stick? And now we're at Happy Birthday. Why is Happy Birthday obviously the better song? Not in terms of the words. Why is it obviously the better song to pick for everybody to sing?
It goes back to what I was saying about it's just more translatable from one person to the next, basically, or it's across languages, anyone.
Okay, so you've locked into that, which is okay. You've locked into the fact that it's across any language, no matter where you're from. You've probably sang it in the language of origin at some point. But there's another piece to this, isn't there?
Repetition. It's repeated many, many times, over and over again.
Because you, like me, have a birthday every single freaking year.
Right? And we sing to everyone else who has a birthday every year.
And we sing it. And you and I are not the only two people in this room that have birthdays every freaking year. So that's the piece, isn't it? It's not just the fact that we sang it in early childhood, because that's where it maybe falls down, but the fact that we've repeated the words over and over and over again, year on year on year on year on year, for every single birthday party that you've ever attended, including your own. That is a fantastic example of how to dig right into your long-term memory and rationalize and figure out a song that everybody knows. So the question is, whose birthday is it today? February 3rd. Who was born in February? Oh, Amy, what date? 18. Hold that thought for a second. You may be getting a rousing chorus. Anybody born in January? Date? First? Happy New Year. 31st. Oh, Amy, I'm sorry. We're going to sing it to you both. Are you ready? After 3. A 1, a 2, a 3. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
Amy and him. Coach, what's your name? Brian. Amy and Brian. Remember the awful.
Sorry.
Yeah, you were doing great, Ian.
That was not rousing at all.
Wasn't it? So we'll do it again because now we know your name. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Rousing, he said. Rousing. Rousing apparently means louder. All right, I'll give you rousing. Stand up, stand up, stand up and tell us how old you are. Stand up, stand up, stand up and tell us your age. Birthdays come but once each year, so we send this message, dear. Happy birthday, Brian, dear. Happy birthday till next year. Be thankful for everyone in this room and your family and all who love you. And don't forget, we're proud of you, so do your best. Be loyal, proud, and true. So happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday from everyone. Spirit fingers at the ready. Have lots and lots of fun. We'll sprinkle some over to Amy. Magical. Cognitive load excelled. That was rousing. Yeah, whatever. All right, so this is important. It's going to go round and round and round and round. I apologize, I can't stop it. It's a jiffy. Okay? This is where youth players are. They are not little experts. They are not. This morning on the field, what did I try to do with my students? What did I try to do with them? Teach them to communicate. All right, but the first thing I had to do was, I'd never met them before. I had to figure out what they were capable of and what they knew. Because without that starting point, which you don't need that starting point. If you work with your teams, as I imagine you do, on a regular basis, we'll get to that question in a minute. The fact that you work with your teams on a regular basis, you don't need to do a performance analysis, assess where your players are at every single practice session. You do, however, need to do a wellness check. Are they behaving today in the way that they, I wouldn't say, would be expected to behave? Or is somebody acting slightly out of character? If that's the case, it's my job to figure out why. Something's going on with that person that's going to impact the learning for them today, and it's my job to help them figure out why. That's what I'm here for. So using all of your germane load and all of your knowledge of your players, you can start to get into the relationship as to why they're behaving in the way that they do. So question number one. What's the difference between performance and learning? I'll give you a couple of minutes to talk to the person behind you, next to you, close to you, and then give me an answer. Your time starts now. Hello, yes, introduce yourself. Get to know. Is that it? Conversation over? Figured it out?
No, I had an idea.
You have an idea? Okay. All right, are we ready? Are we coming back? Good. Anybody? Anybody? Help me out. Brendan?
Yeah, performance is probably what you're seeing in front of you on that particular day.
Okay? So performance is in the immediate, as you said, what you see in front of your eyes in that moment. Learning is, are they able to do something that they were not able to do over time, and they're able to do it better over time? Yes?
I think kind of like what you just alluded to earlier in the previous question, that there is also a lot of overlap between the two, where they push each other to do the opposite, where it's like while you're performing something, you might learn, like you put kids into a session, and you give them the opportunity to succeed. They might succeed, they might fail, and then they might get something out of it, and then obviously you might get to the point where they aren't learning something, and you have to be able to implement that learning opportunity, but I feel like the two of them kind of coincide a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So contextually there, in terms of, let me think here, providing them with a concept that you want them to learn and then putting them into the performance setting to see whether they have or whether they've been able to take anything on. So that takes me right back to this morning. The overarching thing was to try and build on the current knowledge and take them to a different place. It's weird, this. Children, they're so confusing. When I asked Kaya and I always want to call, I can't even remember the name of the B girl, which will come to me in Blakeland. Thank you. So when I asked Kaya and Blakeland why they didn't want to talk as much as they probably felt they should, which by their own admission they did. For one, Blakeland, she wasn't really sure. She wasn't really sure. What we found out later, she was one of the younger. She wasn't the youngest, as I said at the end, but she was one of the younger. Right? So she probably doesn't want to boss older people around. That's tough. But Kaya said, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So they had rationales for why, even though they knew, and these were two players, for those of you that weren't in the session, these were two young players who, when asked the series of questions that preceded that moment, were really on point and knew exactly what needed to be said and why it needed to be said in terms of responses to questions. But then when put out into the performance arena, did not want to perform it in that way. One was not sure why she didn't, but we could figure something out. The other was definitely, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Even though the accepted consequence for her was, well, my team might give up a goal. I'm like, it's a big so what to me, but I don't coach your team, and I'm not the one that's going to yell at you when we lose 1-0 because you didn't speak up. But that's not who I am. So with her, it was a definitive, I don't want to say the wrong thing. The learning now starts to take place. How do we get them past that point of being afraid to fail? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Don't want to say the wrong thing. Ultimately, I don't want to upset the rest of my teammates. I'm afraid to fail in front of everybody else. So how do we get them past that? That's now where the learning starts to take place. So the performance, the immediate, did not portray learning. In fact, it was quite the opposite. It was almost a reluctance to take it on because of the fear of failure. So you've got to get into your players a little bit, not get into them, get into the heads and help them through that. So however you decide to do that as a coach is on you. So let's have a look at what we believe. I didn't write that. Kirshner did. Okay? And now, so Brendan, you can feel good about your answer on the way to your child's birthday party, which, by the way, you should be on your way to right now. Don't listen to any more of this nonsense because family always comes first. Thank you for your time today. And yes, we will reconnect at some point. Thank you. All right, so performance, can be temporary. Can be temporary. Today, I was not expecting a whole great deal out of those players. Why? Because it was the first time I'd ever met them. I was unsure about them. They were unsure about me. They didn't know what was expected of them. They've got to factor through that. Initially, quite reluctant to provide any responses. Develop a level of comfort for them to speak up with their own voice and invite them in to provide solutions to their own performance. You've got to step back sometimes and be brave to do that. And it's not easy. I would never stand up here and pretend that it is. It's not. And believe me, when I first started coaching, I was not there. I would tell you where you needed to be and when you needed to be there. And if you weren't, you and I were going to have a not pleasant conversation of which you would not speak and I would. That's where I started. So it is possible, I think, to grow. I hope this morning I didn't demonstrate younger, much less attractive Ian this morning. Hopefully I didn't. I don't know, you can tell me. And don't just be nice about it. All right, what's cognitive load theory? What is it? Anybody? Yes? Okay. That's it for you? Because we've exceeded your cognitive load, but you're on a really good path. The amount of information you can take in at any one given time. I'll get you in a second. I just want to stick there. There is a reason that these slides have very minimal information on them. And it's not just because I'm the 4 o'clock session. I've done this same presentation, interaction at 10 a.m. in the morning. It's the same thing. When you put, and if any of you are presenters in your realms, in your teaching and learning realms, think about this and think about the amount of information you put on PowerPoints and slides and everything else. So that is definitely, don't want to overload with information.
I was going to say, like, recognizing there's a different optimum point for different people with how much you can give them and trying to find that spot for who's in front of you.
Well, that's really good observation. There's a question I was asked this morning by one of the coaches observing. How did you know you could do that with Blakeland? Finally got it again. It's coming back. How did you know you could stay with Blakeland that long and be that complex with her? Well, that was because of the very quick relationship we developed. I said I would never have tried that with Kaya because she wasn't ready to go there. Blakeland was. And I pick on those two because of the positions and roles that they played. I made a comment earlier about children are very confusing. The coach, the technical director of the club that those two girls play in, was really surprised at Kaya's behavior today. Because apparently Kaya is an unruly mob on her own, usually. So the environment had a definite impact on... Somebody get some oil for that wheel. The environment had a definite impact on her today. Even though she's usually the talker and the extrovert, today she wasn't. Today she wasn't. That wasn't who she was. Today she was more introverted and not really as ready. She would answer the questions in the group setting when the rest of the adults couldn't hear, but she wasn't prepared to be the vocal leading commander that the technical director of the club says, well, that's normally what she does. So the environment had an impact. Performance belied learning there. So yes, be mindful of that, how the environment impacts. All right, anybody else? Cognitive load theory. Tom.
From your first slide, it's how our brains work.
How your brains work and how learning happens. How we process the information that's coming in. And we have this fabulous thing called dual coding, which is you can listen to something and look at something at the same time and absorb both pieces if you practice it. But if you've got certain disorders, that's really difficult. Because if it's all text, somebody is down here at the bottom and missed everything I've said that was maybe as important, if not more, to their learning. So again, this idea of mixing the way that you deliver things up. So what are the three components? You've passed. You can leave early. Okay. I like that. You're in for suffering. That's good. Intrinsic, extraneous, and germane. So, simplify, reduce, maximize. Why are novices not little experts? Think about those players or any players that you've seen today. If you've been to a field session, I imagine most everybody has. Why are those players, regardless of the age, and I know there were some older players out there later on in the day and maybe even earlier today, why are they not little experts? Dan?
They haven't developed the structures, the rich, meaningful structures in their brains yet.
Oh, that slide really resonated with you, didn't it, that jiffy? Yeah, you're absolutely right. They haven't been on the planet very long, so how could they? And yet here we are, we have massive expectations of them. What did we do in practice? I've no idea, coach. What practice are you talking about? We did that in practice. Which one exactly? Don't remember. So yes, that's exactly it. Not been on the planet very long, not had a chance to develop the rich schemas that experts have. Oh, I love it. What is one way to simplify intrinsic load on a learner? A few consistent coaching points. The key word there is?
Consistent. Stick with them.
Yes.
I'm a goalkeeping coach. Used to go 10 different places. Sticking with you, no matter what else I see, it's been a help.
It's hard though, isn't it?
It is, but they actually remember when you stick with the few. That's the good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just pick on Tommy Guys for a second, and I'll do this only because I know him so well and I love him dearly. It would drive him insane when he would ask a coach on a coaching course, what are you going to coach? And the coach would respond, everything. It would drive him insane. What are you going to coach? Everything. Everything that I see. I'm just going to coach what I see today. I'm a sexy coach. Just going to coach what I see. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. Because now you're relying on performance, not learning. See how I did that? But that's probably been more beneficial for you, hasn't it? Dialing in and focusing on.
It also uses my load. It's not easy for me to remember and focus on the few things I need to do instead of being scattered.
Oh, so it's all about you, not the players. I see how you run.
My setup's simpler, it takes less time, I can focus more better.
Why not? Brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. Help yourself to help others. That is fantastic information. Didn't come from me. Fantastic. I love that. Thank you. I'm stealing it. Okay, one way to reduce extraneous load.
Ask less instruction and more leading questions to get where you want them to go.
Okay, so asking the right types of questions, having a destination in mind that you're trying to take them. That's a thing that we miss a lot of time with guided questions. We just start to ask questions and think we're guiding them. But if we don't have a destination of where we're trying to take them, we're probably not. We're probably just out in the woods walking around. So, yes, having an intent to your questions. Good. Yes?
A visual, giving them a picture of what they're trying to do.
Brilliant. Start of the dual coding. not only verbal instruction, but have a look at this. Or better yet, diagram for me what you think it should look like. Giving them that power. I didn't get to that today. I talked about it with them earlier, but we didn't get there. So again, same 6 questions. You don't have to answer them, but going through them one at a time, much better than putting all 6 up here. So this is more about presentation style and the way that you deliver information. And now we get into something that's really terrifying. Half of you have already forgot everything we've just done in the last 45 minutes. What a waste of my time. Thanks for coming. If you don't hold on to it, you're going to lose it. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it faster. So whatever it is that you're trying to go after and learn to improve for yourself and for your players, repetition, repetition, repetition leads to better and stronger recall. It's going to help you out in the long run. So that is terrifying, especially that. I already know you forgot most half of this. Unless I've done my job better, you might have only forgot a quarter. All good. So, last 2 questions for you. I'll give you, let's see here. I'll give you 3 minutes this time. Let's have some answers to these, and we'll get us on our way and go and do what we want to do. So, have a chat with the person behind you again, the person next to you. Get up and walk around. Introduce yourself to somebody new. Why don't you? Thank you. Appreciate that.
I actually came here last because I was like, this guy will entertain me at the end of the day.
That's
Not the knowledge. I was like, it all depends on, but I knew your style. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What's the opposite of this, which is if you've got players with very strong, incorrect, germane learning? Like, I don't know, a player that uses the outside of their foot to kick every single ball. Is it a matter of just bringing them back and then doing the intrinsic, extrinsic, and just teaching them correctly, or is there a fast track to get them to fix it?
I mean, self-assessment would be the best way, but I would suggest that data collection, passing accuracy. Now, if you are really unlucky, and this kid can play with the outside of the foot and get a high rate of accuracy, then why would you fix it, so to speak? But likelihood is, yeah, look, hey, we've been watching you. You know, appreciate that you're trying to use a really difficult part of the foot to connect with the ball, but this is what is happening. 7 out of 10 of your passes are going
Out of bounds. Yeah, right. Yep, got it.
yeah.
Okay.
So giving them some really concrete things, and not too many of them, but just saying, look, this is why. Because if you don't give them a why, just trying to get them to do it on their own is going to be like, no, whatever. This is the way I've always done it. So, yeah. Yeah. Data collection. It's a thing.
Oh, yep, it's on Mrs. Ferry.
All right. I don't know if I want you back. And it's not because I don't want you back. It's because you're engaging with each other, which is really valuable and probably a very, very rich environment, unless you're just talking about, are we going to Wormtown first or are we going to Citizens Cross, in which case that's more valuable. No, it's not. It's not. All right, anybody want to pitch in here? How will the information help you going forward? And what does it mean for long-term player development, potentially? What can it mean?
I coach the very young children.
Yes.
I think you just have to do it.
She did.
So I think teaching them the simple principles
Yep.
and repeat them
Yes.
over and over again, and also teach them to learn the graph. That would be very helpful.
Yep. You do have to be mindful when they're that young, though. If it's over and over and over and over again, what's going to happen?
They get bored.
Yes. So you've got to be tuned in. All right, I've got to stop with this. We've done it for enough. So maybe it just becomes it's the 5-minute set.
Yeah.
And you do it randomly. We're going to 5-minute set. And they go, or they know immediately what that is, or whatever language it is that you introduce to them, and they know that they're working on that particular skill for 5 minutes randomly throughout the practice. A mistake that we could make is the first 5 minutes of every practice. Well, good luck. They'll be showing up at 10 after instead. But if you randomize it and they're not sure now when it's going to show up, whoa, good things can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And for the long-term player development, I think to encourage the player to say, I actually don't know what you mean. The younger children actually will say it. They will
Yes.
say, I don't know what you mean.
they will, won't they?
They do.
Yes. Because they're not at the long-term player development point yet. You are just starting them off on that journey.
Yep.
And your only role there is to keep them engaged enough so that somebody else potentially, or maybe you, if you stick with it that long with them, can help them in that process.
Yep.
But giving them that solid foundation is a great way to start. Thank you.
What we talked about, thank you.
Yes, thank you, not very much. Yeah.
What we had talked about is coaching to fewer things
Yes.
across a broader spectrum of folks learning, so not just audio, but
Yep.
visual,
Brilliant.
physical learning, and through repetition, so people can get, the more I do it, the better I'll be. So instead of making them 2% better across 50 skills,
Yep.
which is not going to help them and help them feel like they're moving forward, fewer things, deeper, better, that will then get them excited to continue to learn and affect motivation.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So you're saying that's not what you do currently? No, don't answer. Don't answer. Give him the mic. It's a great, truly, it was a great answer. You're right. Fewer, less really. There's a reason why less is more is a thing. But we just don't believe it. Or at least we don't go out there and practice that. We'll say it all that less is more. less is more. And then give them a ton of things that is just, to your point, 2% of 50 things, good luck. Yeah, brilliant point. Anybody else for the good of the game? Ian?
The biggest takeaway I've had from the licensing really is that it's not your job to dump all your knowledge on them in a session and prove what you know. It's just give them as much as they're ready to take. That's the biggest thing that's impacted my coaching. Is like, it's not about me, I guess, and it's just give them what they're ready for. And if they can only do, like you planned a session this morning, I don't know if you got through all of it or not. If you didn't, that's fine because they got as much as they needed from it.
Yeah.
And we're ready to go.
So I appreciate that. It's probably why you passed your courses, so congratulations to you on that. I'm going to come back to that point, though. With my session this morning, I deliberately went to the Mass Youth Soccer website and deliberately pulled off that session. It's from 2019, when I was still involved with Mass Youth Soccer. So I wasn't trying to be lazy about it. I wanted to intentionally show, look, you can use our stuff, but you don't have to use everything on it. And that what you use from it is dictated by what you see out there on the field. Because Tommy came up to me and goes, so you want me to move on to the next thing with the field set up? Because that's the type of person he is. And my only response to him, and I don't know if you caught it because the mic was still on, depends what point you were at cognitively and all the rest of it. I said, Tommy, they're not ready for it yet. And so I made that conscious decision on their behalf based on the performance and what I'd assessed over the entire period with them, that they weren't ready to move on. So there would have been no point. That would have been my 2% of 50 things, just to move on for move on's sake. I've planned all this. I'm going to get to it. Well, they're not ready for half of it. The skill is, can you keep them engaged long enough and not get through it that they still feel as though it was beneficial to them? So there is a skill to that too. So, yeah. Anything else for the good of the game?
I have a question.
Yes, please do.
So it's kind of off topic, but it's in regards to long-term player development. At what point do you incorporate like some of those like fun things to do? Because I am a type of coach that is like, if my team is not well-rounded together, like if they hate each other, and I tell them all the time, you can hate each other outside these lines, but inside these lines, you love each other. And like, so at what point do you add like some fun into to help make that long-term player impact?
I believe that question was to the room.
Oh.
I know it wasn't. I am prepared to answer. Karen.
As often as possible.
As often as possible. Love it. Love it. Anybody else? Every day. Okay, we'll come back to you in a second. So the message is quite loud and clear. I would say whenever the sense is they need it. Performance in practice is dropping. There's a reason for that. It's either too challenging, not challenging enough, time to spice it up a little bit. Because I'm a believer in it's all about who is in front of us. No matter what realm I'm in, it's all about you in this moment for me. So why would I not live that everywhere then? And when I sense not going well, they're not up for it today. How many times you walk into, oh, not today. Let's just go fun then. Get them back. Get them back. Now, you don't want to make it so much of a habit that that's all they want to do and lose sight of where we're trying to take them. But, yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, you want to answer the two questions, and then we are done here.
I was going to say, build a system for yourself.
Yep.
Philosophy and be flexible to change the system depending on the players, but build a system, prepare yourself to, before the start of the season, so you are ready to, take the challenge and also, change the system based on the player. And I mean, include all these things. Keep it simple, stupid. Use this
Yep.
consistent language, but yeah, prepare yourself for it.
Yes, there is also another acronym, and I won't say the first word, so I'll use a different one. pretty poor planning leads to pretty poor performance. So planning, planning, planning ahead of time. Create your system, create your process, but keep this idea in mind of how much information and how I'm delivering that information will have an impact on your players' learning. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for sticking through this. And thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
You're very welcome.
We're very honored to have you come back here and really always enjoy your sessions. Thank you, all of you. Hope you've enjoyed your day. There are, of course, a few more tidbits back down on the field house if you're headed back that way.
Ooh, lovely.
And to those of you who are headed into your spring seasons, best of luck.
Yes. Thank you. That was really good. Thanks for your input. It was good. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Now I see the setup. I get it.
That was all. He just wanted to make sure I